It's always best to keep your balls outside and well away from the hole. A wise pinball wizard once told me. And with that, we find ourselves playing PinballFX2 VR. First of all, let's shuffle the elephant out of the room. And that elephant is that, unfortunately, yet again, you will have to buy probably the same tables. Which for people that have already bought all the DLC for the previous platforms, be that on the games consoles or the PC, might be a bit hard to swallow. That said, if you like the Zen Studio licensed tables and the tables that they've made, and happen to have a VR headset in the form of a HTC VIVE, Oculus Rift or PlayStation VR, you are in for a absolutely stunning pinball gameplay experience. Unlike the 2D versions of the game, this genuinely feels as if there's a pinball machine in front of you. And it has to be said, one of the big failings of 2D pinball games, or 2D pinball simulators, is that they don't capture that feeling you get when you look at very small intricate models or very small detailed things in reality. Maybe you do have to be a little bit mentally special and possibly suffer from stuck in your mum's basement syndrome, but there is just something about having all these little railings, lights, flippers and things that interact and move at a small scale. There's something there that's just lost in 2D that, fortunately and rather fantastically, VR actually manages to capture. Back to the land of normality and the land where you don't get strange looks from your partner when they see you enjoying stuff like this. There are two other crucial aspects that virtual reality brings to the pinball experience that really impact the gameplay. The first would be 3D, and that everything is of course three-dimensional by default in VR. And because of that, you get a much more intuitive sense as to where the ball is, how it's approaching, and how to respond to that, and when to actually activate your flipper to get the ball where you want it to go to. It's just something that's completely lacking in the 2D version of the game, and I dare say it actually makes the 2D version of the game a lot harder than the 3D version, with seemingly the situations where a ball goes down the middle of the table, but you could have got it with one paddle, occurring more often in 2D than it does in 3D, because there's no real question in 3D as to where the ball is. It's where it is, it's where you can see it is, and it just makes sense and feels extremely natural and very much like the real pinball experience. The second would be full head tracking, and you no longer have to have these weird artificial camera movements or choosing some arbitrary compromise view in the 2D version of the game that lets you see the full table or most of the table and still be able to somewhat accurately hit the ball. Having the VR head tracking just makes it exactly again like the real world experience of playing pinball. If you want to focus more on the lower paddles, you just move your head and look at the lower paddles. If you've got the ball in the top portion of the table on tables that might have upper paddles, you could just move your head further forwards or down or up or left or right. It's completely up to you, and because it's so seamless and one-to-one, it's, again, as I say, exactly like the real world pinball experience. Now, because I've said a bunch of positive things, I'm going to have to say some negative things. And one of the big negatives with this, I find, is that because it goes for a very literal pinball experience, it seems as if the game is designed with the expectation that you are stood up and effectively playing at a real pinball table. Now, if you've got a desk or something you can lean on, and maybe if you're sat down but you're then prepared to lean forwards and tilt your neck more, it's not so much of a problem. But if you just wanted to play this in a really chilled out, casual way, sat down on your sofa, I did find that I end up tilting my head down a lot more, which with the VR headset on, for longer play times can get slightly uncomfortable. Also, if you try and sort of jiggle the camera by resetting it and then moving your seating position, it's just irritating and not a good way to get into a good place to play the game comfortably while sat down. The default position as well also tends to put the table quite far in front of you, almost with the expectation that a player resets the camera and then walks towards the pinball table. So if you're playing it in any other way than literally playing pinball with it, it can be a little bit frustrating to interact with. Another thing that at first is really striking and has a huge impact in VR is the environments around you, which are custom to each table you get, and they do in some ways add value to the VR version of the game in that you're then in a themed environment. As you see with this underwater table, you actually end up being underwater with the whole building that the tables are placed in also being underwater, and jellyfish swimming around you and a little submarine swimming around you. It's really cool at first, but if you're trying to play more seriously and get a high score, it just grates on you and gets annoying. Mind you, it does simulate that aspect of real-world pinball where you'll be playing a good game and there'll be some annoying little kid picking his nose and then prodding you whilst you're playing. So, in fairness, it does accurately simulate the joys of real-world arcades. But it would be nice, very nice indeed, if that's something you could turn off in the options. And I think anyone that plays this game for more than a couple of hours will be turning it off straight away. In terms of the game interface, doing settings and the overall environment that everything's placed in, you do have this nice setting and it does feel as if you've got your own pinball penthouse room. That said, the actual menus are really quite clunky to go through, and when it comes to placing the pinball tables, you can only have 3 pinball tables in the environment at one point in time, and then you can only choose from specific slots where those tables are located in the environment. Though, as I say, it is a little bit clunky, a nice thing with it is when you've selected your 3 tables, it's very quick to go from one table to the other just by looking at them. And it's also worth noting that the game loads really quickly. So say you get that weird pinball tingling, you can slap your VR headset on and be in no time at all. At least on the PC side of things. This was tested with the Oculus Rift. I don't know how fast it would be if you're using PlayStation VR, for example. Also displayed in the environment is the sort of kitchen fridge with the pictures you've drawn and given to your parents stuck on it in the form of trophies and achievements that you can unlock. Makes perfect sense, you know, if you're a billionaire with a pinball penthouse, you need those pinball trophies to make you feel good about yourself. And then you've got these scoreboard windows that show you the various score or how badly you're doing compared to your friends, and you can flick through them and it displays them for each pinball table, even ones that you don't yet own. So really, in conclusion, for our first real look at this game, graphics absolutely stunning. The VR and what VR brings to pinball, absolutely incredible. The audio, absolutely fantastic. Really immersive sound. It's the same sound effects and tactile sound effects that you'll be familiar with the 2D version of the game. And PinballFX, I mean, that's really why it's called PinballFX. One thing that they always did really well as a company was make it feel as tactile as possible. Also, the rumble on the Xbox controller, if you're playing with the PlayStation controller, definitely adds to the tactile nature of this. And it is a very visceral and very satisfying game to play, all added to massively by virtual reality. I do think it's unfortunate that the PinballFX structure is as it is with its DLC and how that operates, but I can also understand why they do it like that. And if you are a hardcore pinball fan and you're really going to be spending the time on this, the cost and the segregation of all the content through the DLC probably won't be a problem because you will get the value from it. It's kind of like with train simulator or driving simulators where you might spend 30 hours, 40 hours, 100 hours, too much time that you should be playing video games for, but you might spend that time on one pinball table, in which case £5 for an individual table isn't too much. Of course, if you're more of a casual player though, I think the DLC makes things feel as if you're getting a worse offer, and it makes it confusing and irritating to buy into. Perhaps the biggest negative though for the VR version is, unlike the 2D version, they don't have a free table. So it's not like someone could just pick this up and give it a try, see if they like pinball in VR, and then maybe start buying the DLC content. You have to initially buy into the game and get the pinball pack with 3 tables. In my opinion though, all said and done, this is the best pinball game I've played on a computer, and is the closest I've ever come to experiencing having my own pinball table in my shed-like abode due to the design of British houses. So fantastic job by Zen Studios. You can buy this on for PlayStation VR. I guess it's on the PlayStation Store. You can buy it on the Oculus home store, and we were using the Oculus version to review this. And you can now also pick it up on Steam to play with either the Oculus Rift or the HTC VIVE or whatever open VR headset you happen to have at this point in time. Thank you very much for watching this video in its entirety. If you haven't yet, don't forget to click the subscribe button, don't forget to like us, and feel free to drop any questions in the comments. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Until tomorrow's video, take care, have a cup of tea, and goodbye everybody.